Good evening, campers, dreamers, and babysitters. And yes, I am super excited to announce that we have partnered with Sony Pictures Home Entertainment to start getting you guys some reviews of some upcoming Blu-rays. And I'm really excited to say that the first one that I get to talk about under the Sony umbrella is a little film I reviewed a few months back. And I mean, obviously, if you saw the title, you know what we're talking about. But I got a chance to check out the Blu-ray for Butcher's Crossing. And if you didn't see my review of the film, I'll basically give you a quick little rundown, but I will have the review linked in the description below if you want my full thoughts. But this is a pretty gritty western. I mean, like, this is something that we don't see too often. I feel like once every few years we get one of these kind of films that really leans into the western aesthetic, actually like going out on location, really shooting these rough, gritty, guerrilla style filmmaking style films that really harkens back to the old west. And this obviously has Nicolas Cage in it, and he is an absolute beast in this. I know the joke going around the internet was that he was bald and everything, but he really gives an emotional and very, very spiritual performance in this. And I was really impressed with it through and through. And I was just impressed with the movie. It's not something that absolutely blew my mind. It was not something that I was sitting there saying everybody needs to go out and see this. I think that this is for a very particular audience. And, I'm just someone who happens to really enjoy Westerns. I really like them. I watch all kinds of ones from way back in the day to even some of the more modern stuff like Django, Hateful Eight, and, all that good stuff. But this was one of those ones that I think really impressed me with just how they were able to, capture the essence of the era. I think that, like, when they went out and shot on location, they really used the most of it. There's a lot of natural lighting, there's a lot of real natural terrain, and you really feel what these characters are going through when it comes time for them to kind of face the elements. And there's a little bit of a survival angle to the end of this. And there is a bit of a psychological angle that adds a little bit of that, kind of survival psychological horror, I should say. It's just a tinge, but it's there. And I really enjoyed the film. Now, when it comes down to the Blu-ray, I gotta say the transfer here is excellent. I am a huge Blu-ray aficionado, as you guys know on the channel. I got a ton that used to be in my background, but I've moved them to the other side of the camera here. But yeah, this is one that I think the transfer was really well done. The thing about this film is that they shot it on actual film, so there's a lot of that natural grain, and you do not lose that at all. I think even for the Blu-ray here, like, I've gotten used to really falling in love with 4K and how they are able to kind of capture that grainy, naturalistic aesthetic to a lot of the older films, but they really do a good job of making it pop here, and I really enjoyed it. I think that it really sharpens those deep darks, which there are a lot of. I mean, like, we're dealing with bison, we're dealing with the cold snow. There's a lot of deep dark forest in this film, and it looks really deep and really sharp. And the audio is pretty good too. I've had some Blu-rays. I don't know what they're doing with the mix necessarily, but it just seems to be bouncing up and down. And that's whether I play it through my sound system or whether I play it through, just the speakers of the television themselves. Now, I didn't have any issues with this. I think that the sound was very consistent. I really enjoyed that. But it is just your stereotypical standard Blu-ray sound mix. Obviously, there's English subtitles, French subtitles, all the standard stuff you get. And if there is one big complaint that I have to make about this release, it is that it is purely standard. There are no special features on this Blu-ray, which, if you guys know us and you know how we talk about physical media releases when we talk about them on the Sunday Scaries and things like that, that's a huge blow to any Blu-ray release, because as a physical media collector, you want that extra stuff. You want to be able to dive in and listen to at least a commentary about a film that you really love, because that's why we buy these things. That's why we own them. We want to have them in our collections. We want to study them. And I mean, it's great to have the film. I'm happy to have it. But I want a little bit more into the filmmaking. I want to get into the actors' heads. I want to get into the creatives' heads behind the scenes. I want to see what it took to really put this thing together. I want to see them on location, especially in a film like Butcher's Crossing. And, ultimately, I gotta give that a pretty big ding on this, because really, when you pop this bad boy in, you're not even going to get any previews, which that doesn't bother me at all on Blu-rays, but it's going to go straight to a menu, and you're going to have play, scenes, and language, and that's it. And I really yearn for the days when, like back when I was a kid, when you'd get like a DVD or hell, even a VHS, when you'd scroll to the end and they'd have little documentaries and stuff. But back in the day, you'd buy a DVD, and 90% of the time they were a combo pack with two discs. The second disc is all special features. And I think with Blu-rays becoming kind of this physical media as a whole, kind of becoming more of this boutique thing, as we're kind of phasing more into streaming these days, I think they really need to step up the game. Now granted, you're not going to be paying like 25 to $30 for this is probably going to be on store shelves for, I'd imagine, anywhere from 15 to 19.99. But with that lack of special features, although I really enjoyed the film and I think that the transfer is beautiful, I'm going to say that this is probably a wait until it goes on sale for me. I think that this is, again, something that if you've seen the film and you enjoy it, you already know what I'm talking about. It's definitely worth a watch, especially if you're a Western enthusiast. If you like these survival tales, if you like these psychological thrillers. But as a whole, the Blu-ray is just very bare bones. There's just not much here for me to really say, like, yes, this is worth having on your shelf, other than to just own the film. And that's perfectly serviceable for some, but as a collector, I want more of that. Like, just give me more of that behind the scenes stuff. Again, a commentary alone would have made up for it, because at least we're getting the play by play from at least the filmmaker, the editor, whoever they could grab to give you some kind of insight to what it was like on set. And ultimately, that's where I'm going to sit with Butcher's Crossing. I'm going to say wait for a sale. I think once this thing, hits anywhere from $8 to $10, it'll probably be a lot more worth it to you. Hopefully, maybe Arrow or somebody will pick this up in the future and really give us those special features that we're looking for. I know they do a really great job of going back and kind of piecing this thing together. I see this film as being something that more people are going to pick up on and hop on board with as time goes on and as the years go on. Because again, it's a very solid movie, a very solid Western, and it's rare that we get a film that really, just stays to that grit, that nitty gritty, rugged nature of these old style Westerns. And yeah, the fact that, I got to review it earlier this year and enjoyed it then, and then rewatching it just a couple of days ago, and it's one of those ones that I'm happy to have it. Again, I just wish that the release was a little bit stronger. But yes, folks, that is not all I have for you today. Although this doesn't have special features, I did get a chance a couple of months ago to sit down with the editor of this film, Nick Pezzillo. It was right when we got the screeners for this and Your Lucky Day. He edited both films. So I actually got to sit down with him and talk for a little while. Now, mind you, the interview, there was some dropout. His camera cut out at one point, froze. So it's a little wonky in there, but I mean, it is still very informative. We get to talk to an actual editor on the channel, which is somebody we have not spoken to yet. We've spoken to a lot of directors, we've spoken to some actors, but we have not spoken to anybody who really specializes in editing of a film. So if that's something you're interested in, I definitely think this is an informative interview, and we definitely dive a little bit deeper into Butcher's Crossing. So without further ado, I'm just going to kick that off here. I'm going to let it run, and that'll be the end of the video for me. So thank you guys for watching this. Definitely, if this does pique your interest, go out, pick up Butcher's Crossing. It's available now on all retailers. You can get this on Amazon. Hell, you can even walk into Walmart and pick it up. It's definitely worth it. Thank you again to Sony for sending this out to me. And yeah, here is my interview. What's going on, guys? Yes, I am sitting here with editor Nick Pezzillo. Very nice to meet you there, sir. He has just done some work with the films we just covered, Your Lucky Day and Butcher's Crossing. So how you doing, Nick?
I'm good. I'm good. How are you?
I'm not doing too bad. I really
Gotta say, this is the first time on this channel that we've spoken with an editor, so it's an honor, sir.
Oh
Uh,
gosh.
we
Pressure.
have it's all good. We're real laid back here, at least I am. But we've spoken with many directors, a handful of actors, but yeah, you are the first editor that I've ever gotten on the channel here, and I love it because I that's kind of what I want to do with this channel is get, when it comes to interviews, more in depth with other people behind the scenes. And I think that for a lot of people who may be just getting into film or are, you know, not as well versed in it, I don't know if they understand how important your job is and just how much your actual like facet of what you do shapes the film that they see on screen. So I got to ask, is like the first question here, was an editor always like the first choice for you, or did you kind of go in thinking, well, maybe I'll be, a sound guy, or maybe I will be a director, but then you kind of fell in love with the process of editing?
Yeah, you hit it on the head. I mean, I was, I came to LA way back when with the aspirations of, I think, just directing, filmmaking, and because of the idea that it was one of the art forms that I saw that kind of, you know, all the different art forms kind of come to a head in, and it's like I was always kind of into art when I was growing up, and I got the an experience editing, and I was always kind of good at it. Like I was always decent at editing. It was something that was kind of like my fallback. It was like, your parents say always have something behind, if
Mm-hmm.
and editing kind of was that for me. Like and so I treated it as such for a long time until I was like, you know what, this is the thing that I'm getting the most, opportunities in. So, and I like the idea of like, just in your life following opportunities, open doors, and because they don't always stay open. And I've, and once I, really kind of like started treating it with the respect that it was that I, that I was due. I was like, it was just like I fell in love. I was like, man, this is because it's where like my dad was in construction. I know I'm digressing, but he I watched him make buildings, right? Like so he would take something from nothing, piece of land, and make a building on it, see it to completion. And so a movie like, and in filmmaking, like editing for me was like that. It was like you get to take all these pieces now and you get to make something and see it to completion. And that was like for me this kind of really fulfilling thing. Like I can't personally like leave things half done. Like I have to
Mm-hmm.
finish them. And so like I don't know if I could be at any other part of the process, because I it just would be too nerve-wracking. And so I like, I like being able to take, stuff and really kind of see it to what it wants to be, try to, and shape it and make something out of it. I don't know. Yeah, editing for me is that's where it's at. It's the culmination of all the things that I was like hoping for in filmmaking.
Oh, absolutely. And I love to hear that because we recently on the channel we just did our first like real official short film we did over the last year here. And
Awesome.
yeah, we went to a film festival, did really well. We won an award, which was cool. But I was directing and editing that. And yeah, it's definitely one of those things where I completely understand why you almost need that third party to come in, because like I remember day one sitting down and editing and just saying, oh my god, I've wasted everybody's time, this thing is a mess, like it's all a complete joke, it sounds terrible, it's everything, and I've just barely started the process. Is that kind of a fear that you have when it comes to showing any of the filmmakers you've worked with? I know Dan Brown, I believe you guys are personal friends, or you guys at
Yes.
least went
Yeah.
to school together, so maybe not so much with him. But for Butcher's Crossing, was that ever like a nerve-wracking experience to be like, okay, this is just like the first edit, like I don't want this guy to like freak out or anything, like, or were you going in like, okay, I've got this, full confidence mode?
So 100%, I felt nerves and
Mhm.
all of it. I think because you want to do your best job, you want to put your best foot forward. And for Butcher's Crossing, I was brought in after they had shot, so they didn't have to work with me. It was something where it was like, I think for me, I needed to also prove to them that I was, worthy of the task because I had only cut, other than a long career of music videos and commercials and whatnot, like Your Lucky Day. And so and so they, it was a matter of really proving to the producers and to Gabe Polsky that I was going to bring something to the table that they hadn't, that they wouldn't get otherwise. And it is a very, but I think once I start working with the materials, I get very confident very fast. So
Good.
probably to a fault. And it's like, because I think for me, just making decisions and seeing the material, like whether it's the best it will be, uh, probably not, but as good as I can make, start to get the pieces going there. And like, I will have confidence in the fact that this is the idea that I'm trying to portray. This is the scene how I think the scene can work, and how I think the pieces can play out musically, sound design. Like I like to work with sound a lot, and it's just when I show a director that for the first time, there's always nerves, but it's also just a starting place. I think that to an earlier point that the price of entry is so little now that I think a lot of people have actually experienced how important editing is, because like so many more people are using TikTok and YouTube and making, just little projects, for, to go, hopefully viral or whatever it is. And so they understand that editing is a huge, part of it. Yeah, this video thing, I'm not quite sure about.
It's okay. We can keep going here. I can definitely throw some footage over this and we'll keep it going. But yeah, so pretty much jumping from that point, I guess, like, when you have something that's as important as a task of editing, when we have two films here that are very different on opposite sides of the spectrum in a lot of ways. I mean, they're both they're like, one's a Western, a period piece in a sense, and the other one is very much modern, feels a lot like films that I don't know if this is probably the best comparison, but have you ever seen Good Time? Yeah, so I get a lot of vibes from that, from Your Lucky Day. Is this something that I think you've kind of already answered it, but I was just curious and I wrote it down anyway. Was this something that did you work in any way simultaneously on these films? Have you ever had projects where you're kind of going from one tone to the other, or is it always one project at a time? You see it, like you said, you see it through to the end and then push on from there.
Big time. I worked, so like Your Lucky Day was shot 21, I think around the same time as Butcher's Crossing, and I cut Your Lucky Day that first, basically, to get to its a good few director's cuts in, and then Butcher's Crossing came up for me, and I ended up cutting that and taking a good break from Your Lucky Day. And then we came back, and after Butcher's Crossing was locked, and we came back to Your Lucky Day. And so, because Your Lucky Day, because it's a smaller film, the one thing about smaller films is, that with a lot less budget, especially when you're working with one of your best friends, is like you have time. And so we had some time over the course of a year to be able to really hone in on what that film could be. We had no money for like screenings, we had no money for any of the bells and whistles, but we did have we did have some time to kind of come back around projects and be able to see the film fresh, which was also really nice, because after a month or two, you can come back and you're watching the film like an audience would, and you're like, oh, what is that doing there? And you get to cut it out, or like, I'm glad we made that decision. It's like there's just those moments that that they really show how well they're working or not working.
Absolutely, yeah, and I think those are some of the best moments, especially because, again, being someone in more of a writing director perspective, from my point, like, those are my aspirations, like handing it off to a third party and just seeing the work that's like people in your profession do, and just being able to watch this project slowly come to life. It's there's nothing like it. And I think one of those aspects here that you detail and kind of like your about page on your website here is that you talk about sound, and you touched on it a little bit there, but sound is seriously one of the most underrated portions of the editing process. I feel everybody just kind of assumes, okay, we'll get there, but like when you're actually performing and putting in sound design, it's like that is truly what brings a lot of films to life in a lot of sense. And like the especially in the realm that I focus primarily in, which is horror. So I want to know, like, on these two films, was there ever a moment when it came to implementing sound or even just a piece of score that's really, I think, brought that moment to life for you, to where you were like, oh, this is perfect, like this is what I was looking for?
Mm. Well, yes. So I think in Your Lucky Day, I won't get too deep into the
Mhm.
weeds of it, but there's a scene that implements a hammer of sorts, and the sound for that was fun, because it's all about, the quietness of the scene until things happen, uh, and I think that's, I think, it's the ebb and the flow of what you're, sonically, how much you're hearing at any given moment to then embellish or emphasize the things that you want to be heard. Um, and that one, I think by and far is, and then there's another moment that might or might not implement a bottle, that where it was funny because the sound came first before there was some little visual effects in there, and it was almost like the visual effects that happened in that scene, we timed the sound first, and then the visual effects played off of it. So it was like,
Mhm.
we definitely, the timing of the things that happened in that scene were definitely just in the rough cuts, it was just sound. You didn't there was nothing to see until things got down the line.
Yeah, it's amazing to see like what that will, like transfer, and what that'll change as far as just like, the perspective and the idea of where a filmmaker's head is, or where someone in this creative process is going when it comes to sound. Like I love hearing that, a sound design choice literally changed the way they were going to implement visual effects. I mean, that is just really the ebb and flow of this entire filmmaking journey in this process. I know that there's a lot of filmmakers out there who are auteurs, and they want to, do every little piece of it, and that's fine to a sense. But I think that the collaboration is huge on making a film as best as it can be. And is that something that you've experienced a lot? I know, I think you could probably go a little deeper into that with Dan, but is collaboration something that you've experienced a lot with your projects, even going into things? Hey, well, awesome, perfect. I'll be able
And
to.
I'll answer everything again.
It's all good. I'll just put some footage over that, and we'll get there. But to simplify my rambling question there, is it just something like we're being in such a creatively collaborative process like editing? Um, have you had moments on working on both of these films, or maybe with your commercials, where you are sitting down with the filmmaker and having to kind of stand your ground on certain things and say, like, I think you're seeing it like this, but trust me when I say that this is going to be the more narratively beneficial route?
Yes, and thank you for bringing it up. I like to think that I'm always right. No, no, for me, it's like I try to see the film and the decisions that we're making from the audience perspective. Like I try
Mhm.
to be what does the audience know? What don't they know? And what are they, it's like, and how are they feeling as far as like the ebb and the flow of the pacing? That's kind of like the first. So it's like when we're having discussions of like removing a piece of dialogue or adding a piece of dialogue, uh or moving scenes around, it comes down to like, what does this do for the audience, right? And
Mhm.
so that's the place where I mean, I'll definitely try to hold my ground. It's like, "Hey, listen, this is so if they don't know this, they won't know this, this, and this, and they won't, And as long as that's the intention, then good, right? If that's what you want. But if
Yeah.
it's not what you want, then we may need to do something else or pivot, right? Because you
Mhm.
don't, if so it's a matter of intention for the director. I mean, like there's things where it's like if I don't agree with something that that is happening or some decision being made, I'll bring it up and say, listen, this is how I feel about it, and but at some point you're going to have to answer for it. I won't have to. You're going to have to. As
Mhm.
long as you know that this might be the possible outcome for it, then great. Then all good. I'm behind you. But it's just a matter of, I think, understanding of like what our decisions editorially are going to affect the story and and the characters therein. And there's definitely things that I fall in love with that don't make it, or I end up falling out of love with, and or the director doesn't like, and then and they're right. You know what I mean? There's it's I think that just learning over time, there's never like 100% right thing until it's been tested multiple times on multiple viewings, uh, down the line.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, I think that that's just some great insight to especially understanding like people who are like me who want to be in this industry and who are coming up is just kind of understanding what a process like this, entails. And like, the fact that you can't really be, unless I guess you're James Cameron or somebody, you can't really sit there and say like, no, you're going to do it like this. It benefits your project more or less to be a bit more open-minded and let people come in and really perform what they do best. And in your sense, it's editing, where it's like, having someone come in and say, hey, I'm going to let you take the reins on this, and I'm just going to kind of sit back. So I
Well,
imagine with,
don't get me wrong. It's not as much as like I'm going to take the reins and you just sit back. It's more
Mhm.
of like I'm going to try to facilitate the thing that we're both trying to do, right? So like and it depends on the director, because some directors are very clear headed and clear
Mhm.
of idea of what they want, what they don't. Some directors are not, and I've worked with both.
Mhm.
It's like and like some directors, they don't like it until they see it. They don't even know it sometimes until they see it. And it's like, which means that the whole process, they're kind of just moving forward until they get to that thing where they're like, oh, that was what I was hoping for. And then there's other directors where it's like they know what before they shoot it what they were trying to do, right?
Mhm.
And and it only like emphasizes their judgment when it gets to that point, and they're like, it works. So it's like, and then and I'm there in both of those versions. I'm doing a little bit differently, because in one, I'm just trying to I'm just trying to make it better than what was supposed to be. The other version, I'm kind of almost in the seat of like, let's find it together. You know what I mean? Like, and so it's kind of a different hat as far as like, how directors work.
Awesome. Yeah, no, and that's totally where I was going with that, is the sense of like, um, I know that the process of working with an editor comes down to a lot of just you know, not them necessarily sitting back. That was poor wording on my part, but like, more or less just saying like, instead of dictating and directing. But it's awesome that like you have worked with both and you've kind of had an experience there, because I think that that's definitely going to make you stronger as you go along in the profession. And that's something that I think a lot of people need to, who want to step into this stuff, need to be aware of. So I basically am running out of time, but I want to hit you with one last question, a little something horror related,
Yeah.
for my fans specifically, because I know most of them expect horror from us. But again, we're also do genre stuff, and these two films are perfect for that. They're a little harder than your normal, dramas and things like that. But if you are hopefully in the future going to be working on some horror films, is there like a specific genre? Maybe it's a slasher, a Lovecraftian kind of film, or anything that you are dying to work on, or dying to, at least throw your hat in the ring. Maybe there's a specific franchise you'd love to be a part of.
Uh, I would love. I mean, like I loved the movies that affected me the most. I
Mm-hmm.
think like Requiem for a Dream, like the Ring. I know these are different things, like the Ring, even
No,
like
you're good.
the last Invisible Man film
Oh yeah.
was amazing, and like that I just saw Talk to Me, which I think they did a
Oh,
great job. And
fantastic.
yeah, and obviously Ari Aster, you know, I'd love to do Hereditary 2. That's
Yeah,
what
something like that.
I was gonna, here's the
Yeah.
thing. Those movies that really just like get under my skin, like House of the Devil or whatever, you know, it's
Mhm.
like horror you know, films that just seep under and really just make you squirm. That's what I like to do for an audience. Like I would love to be a part of any film that can make people just kind of like get a little uneasy and my wife hates horror films. You know, so anything that she would hate basically.
Will
So
be perfect.
no,
Uh,
I hopefully will make something she likes as well. But
Awesome. Well, I'm sure she'll at least sit down and watch it with you because you
oh,
worked
she
on it.
will,
So.
and she'll hate it, and she'll
Supportive spouses are number one in all
100%.
of this industry. I'm lucky to have one as well. So, alrighty, Nick. But that's all the time that I have here for us. Thank you so much. Technical difficulties aside, we'll get through that on the edit. But I appreciate you coming in and doing this, and thank you for being the first editor on my show. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. It was great to chat with you.
Awesome.
It's awesome. I hope to do it again.